So for those of you new to us today, welcome again. This is Flushing Town Hall. Flushing Town Hall actually just celebrated its 45th anniversary as a presenting arts council. And our mission is actually to bring people together through global arts. And architecture, as you know, is an art. So we've been partnering with American Institute of Architects Queens formally now for a few years, and we are super grateful for their partnership, their collaborative nature, and their generosity. So thank you very much to AIA Queens. And I do have to plug, for those of you that have littles, we have a partnership event this Saturday with AIA Queens again. It's Family Day. It starts at 10 o'clock. It's Designing the Future for Kids, and there's tons of workshops and programs designed to have fun with the littles and teach them about architecture. So again, thank you for being here. Please do check out our website. We have tons of programs going on with all different types of multidisciplinary arts, so we hope to see you again soon. And without further ado, I will now hand it over to Jacqueline Velez, the chapter's current president, who I'm sure most of you know. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jacqueline Velez, and I am the president of the AIA Queens chapter. I want to warmly welcome all of you to the first chapter's event for Women in Architecture, which includes an exhibition and as well as this panel discussion, Where Are the Women Architects? So if you didn't have a chance, I invite you to make sure that you view the exhibition. That's downstairs in the exhibition hall. It will be there just till tomorrow. So this is your last opportunity to see the amazing work. And that was absolutely curated by AIA Queens chapter. This mic is too high for me since I'm so tall. So I want to give a very special thank you to all the amazing women that made it possible to have this exhibition. And I know some of you are here tonight. My dear friend Elizabeth Pacheco, who's all the way here from Jersey. Harriet Mikakis, I hope I said that right, Harriet. Laura Hine, and Sarah Kaplitz. I'm not sure if she's here yet, but she was registered, and she also has a beautiful exhibit downstairs. So I want to also welcome our panelists, Despina Stratigakos, Latoya Kamdang, Robert Cody, and Graciela Carrillo. So thank you so much for being here as well. I want to acknowledge a few of the AIA presidents that are here. We have, I don't know if Sarah Drake is here. She was coming from AIA Brooklyn chapter, not sure if she's here. We have John Fallon from Newark, Suburban, New Jersey as well. And we have Willie Zambrano, the AIA New York State president. We also have our chapter's first woman president, Laura Hine. And the Queens AIA chapter was established in 1945, and Laura was the first woman president, and I am the second woman president and the first Latina president of the chapter. So it's exciting. And a very, very special thank you, of course, to Flushing Town Hall for always allowing us to have all of our events in this beautiful space. We are so fortunate to have this incredible relationship with them. And I was actually going to mention, but I think Jessica already mentioned, check out their website. They have amazing events here, jazz concerts, cultural mashups. So really, we're so appreciative of the relationship we have with them. So tonight is truly a very special night for me because I finally see this come to fruition. This has been in the works for so long. I know Despina knows that. I've been in touch with her for quite a couple of years now. Ruben, Graciela, so many of you know that I've been trying to work on this, but it just, for many reasons, it didn't happen sooner. But it's happening now, and it's better late than never, and just so happy that it's happening. So, yes, So I remember the first time that I walked into an AIA Queens chapter general meeting, and it was a room full of maybe 30 people, and I looked around and they were all men, and I asked myself, why am I the only woman here? And Willie was the president back then, and by the way, he's a culprit. That's the reason why I'm here. Because he was really the one who persuaded me to be part of the AIA. He was an inspiration. So I don't know if I should thank you, Willie. There's Sarah Drake. All right. So then during an AIA conference, I had a colleague who gave me a book, and the book is "Where Are the Women Architects?" And I must confess that I put that book on my bookshelf for a couple of years. And then COVID came, and it changed everybody's life. One day I decided that I'm going to read this book. And I have to say that was the book that inspired me to have this event. I am so happy that I got to read the book, and I'm happy that Despina's here. So really that is, I read the book and I said, we haven't had, the chapter has never had a Women in Architecture event. I think this is way, way overdue. And that's how I decided to have this event. So I reached out to Despina, and I'm sure a lot of you have reached out to people, and they never return, an email or a phone call. But Despina was so gracious that she replied to my email. And not like me, it takes me like 2 weeks to reply to an email. Despina's within 24 hours, you get a reply from her. So I just want to take a moment to thank Despina and to thank this remarkable panelist for joining us. I know you are very busy, you have a busy schedule, and I thank you so much for being here tonight. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to have the panel discussion, then we'll have a Q&A session, and then at the end we'll just do a couple of raffles of the books that you saw downstairs. By the way, an opportunity, this is your chance to have Despina sign your book. This is it. You won't have another chance. Just kidding. So I do have a few announcements to make. If you are an AIA member, make sure that you have given us your AIA number. This event has been approved for 2 LU's units. This coming Saturday, we have a family day here, but it's all sold out. But just so you know, we have that event every single year here in this space. December 5th at Terrace on the Park. It is the signature holiday party of our chapter, not to be missed. Because I'm telling you, not because it's Queens, but we know how to throw a party. And we are going to have DJ Zog from Miami, Power 96, who happens to be my nephew. He will be the DJ. So not to be missed. And there's beautiful raffles that are done by Ida Zambrano, does a beautiful job every year. So please make sure that you attend that event, because it's a lot of fun. And I know, like Sarah has attended, a lot of you have been there, so it's a lot of fun. And I encourage you to visit our website, It has all of our updates, it has all our upcoming events. And for those of you who file with DOB, we have a DOB industry meeting, and we are going to be posting the minutes of those meetings on our website, and that is an incredible resource for our members. So just, be patient. It's happening in the next few days, but it's an incredible resource for our members. And lastly, we always are seeking passionate volunteers to give back to your community. So I know you all want to be out here volunteering for Queens AA chapter, so please make sure you come and talk to me because we're always looking for volunteers. So I just want to share a few statistics. Let's see, hopefully this will work. And okay, that's what I should do. I should have put that before, so you see the panelists. So here's, as of this morning, our chapter has 455 members, and we have 133 women members. So I say, where are they? They're not here. So that's why we're here, just trying to see how we can bring them out here. And according to AA statistics, the national statistics is that 27% of AA members are women. So that number is not so high. This is just what has happened in the past few years, but we're not there yet. We still have a lot of work to do. So before we dive into the panel discussion, I just want to leave you with my thoughts. If we continue to walk into a room and ask ourselves, where are the women architects? Then I don't think we've gone there. We have not gotten where we want to be. We're not there yet if we still ask ourselves that question. And I think that my thought is that one of the ways that we can change that is that we as women, we have to be visible. And by visible means you have to be engaged. You have to come out. You have to be part of a professional organization. You have to be part of your community. You have to mentor. You have to be mentored yourself. You have to take on leadership roles. You have to make your presence known. It's the only way to be out there and be visible. And this is the way that we will make sure that our work and our efforts are recognized. So I know that the panelists are going to have amazing, inspiring stories to share, better than mine. So it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for the evening. Despina Stratigakos is a writer, historian, and professor of architecture at the University of Buffalo. She is the author of 4 books, including Where Are the Women Architects?, which explores the status of women in architecture and which has spurred public discussions since its publication in 2016. Her efforts to promote greater diversity in architecture have taken many different forms over the years, including a collaboration with Mattel in 2011 to produce architect Barbie, who made an appearance in last summer's blockbuster Barbie movie. She has been involved in Wikipedia editathons to increase the women in architecture content on that influential website. She has published in The Atlantic, the LA Times, The Architect magazine, among other media outlets. She's a co-founder of the Architecture and Design Academy in the Buffalo Public Schools, which builds a diverse pipeline of students entering undergraduate architecture programs, and recently served as UB Vice Provost for Inclusive Excellence. So please join me in extending a warm welcome to Despina and our esteemed panel.
So thank you very much, Jackie, for that introduction and also for the invitation to be here. and not giving up. It did take us a while to coordinate, and I am really pleased to be here. I've enjoyed meeting some of the AIA Queens members tonight and our panel. So as Jackie mentioned, the format tonight is I'll be moderating, I'll be asking the panel questions and around, I'm going to keep track of the time, and in about an hour we'll open up the discussion to everyone, and I'm really looking forward to both hearing the panelists tonight, but also very much looking forward to hearing from you tonight. And the book that Jackie mentioned, Where Are the Women Architects? I mean, time goes quickly. It was published in 2016. And so I'm really trying to get a sense of where we are at today. And there has been some progress. So when I published the book, the national membership for women in AIA was, I think, 18%, so we are up. But one of the concerns I've had and that I expressed in writing the book is that change is very slow and incremental, and what can we do to speed it up? So I'm going to start by asking the panelists to introduce themselves and to tell us how they intersect with the issues that we're going to be talking about today. So the question for all of you to begin with is, please tell us a little bit about yourselves and your involvement with issues of equity in architecture, and what do you see as the greatest challenge to advancing women's status in the profession today? Open up that question to all of you.
I can start, Despina. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you, Jackie, for inviting us to be here. It's truly an honor to join this panel with these prestigious speakers. So my name is Graciela Carrillo. I am originally from Bogota, Colombia. I came here with a work visa and did the whole immigration path, licensure from work visa through green card and now citizenship. I'm also very involved at AIA. I was, like Jackie, the first Latina president of the Long Island chapter, a 75-year-old chapter, which you never would think that in 75 years, how come the first Latina, the third woman's being the president? So I had a little bit of that experience as Jackie of being in a room and not seeing women. So I'm happy that Jackie actually gave me the book when we met because she was thinking about creating this committee. I created the committee in Long Island, the Women in Architecture, which I will share that experience later on. So for me, being not only the only woman, I was working for a consulting firm in Long Island. That's how I got my work visa. I was the only woman architect pretty much there, and the only immigrant too. So it was like all the minorities in one. And so I looked very young at that time. So I was like the younger Latina woman. And I think one of the challenges, big challenges, is like breaking those stereotypes and maybe overcoming systemic biases. That's, I think, one of the big challenges that we are facing in the profession. But I think with the help and the support by all these different committees, EDI, Women in Architecture, everything that organizations are doing to bring awareness of supporting minorities, we can eventually get to the point that we don't need to advocate anymore. But like Despina said, this is going to take a long, long time. And a little bit more about my background. Since I'm, of course, an immigrant, I also co-founded the Immigrant Architects Coalition. It's a non-profit organization supporting immigrant architects that come here already licensed in their countries, but they don't know that here, if you don't have a license, you cannot even be called an architect. So it's all these different opportunities that we have as a community to support each other and lift each other. So it's really from my heart that I spent all this time advocating for the profession. And currently, I am the moderator of the Strategic Council at AIA, but I was just elected to join the national board next year as a director at large. So I hope that I can represent more diversity within the national board and bring my own perspective and experience to the national level. And work-wise, because I talk a lot about advocacy and volunteer, which is pretty much all my life, I work as a senior now facilities manager for Nassau Buses. So I moved from that company, consulting architectural engineering. I was there for 18 years. And recently I joined Nassau Buses, which is the public sector. So it's like another perspective, and I enjoy that a lot. So thank you.
Do you want to tackle the, sorry, do a round of applause? What do you see as, or what do you see as the greatest challenge?
Well, the greatest
Advancing women's studies.
Well, the greatest challenge, I think, is, besides the biases and stereotypes, is the lack of mentorship. I think that's really important because women don't really have that mentoring opportunity within firms, and now organizations are bringing up a lot of mentoring. One of those mentoring programs is Arquitina. It's a nonprofit organization that I also am part of, and we help Latinas getting licensed. And also access to leadership roles within firms. I think firms, even though they want to, advance EDI just because it's good to do, and now there is more awareness that if firms are not advancing EDI, it's not a good firm culture. Advancing for them sometimes means just hiring women, but not giving them the opportunity for leadership roles. And I think that's really important. And that's a challenge because that's the reason basically why I left my previous job. And I have to say that here, and I share it all the time, because there was no more advancement for me within the firm. So I saw other peers that they had a ton of experience like me, and they were offered shares and offered positions for almost like getting into the principal role, and I was never getting that offer, even though I had all the experience, education, volunteering efforts. So I saw that disparity, and that's why I try to advocate as much as I can to give that opportunity for women to be sitting on a table, but on a leadership role within firms.
Yeah, so important, thank you. And the mentoring happening at different levels. So mentoring when you might be first entering practice, mentoring at mid-level, but then also mentoring to advance to leadership roles.
Yeah, that's very important, definitely.
And firms have had, for a long time, that has been kind of the informal, there's been an informal approach to that, and the problem with, one of the things I really emphasized and learned being in the role of Vice Provost for Inclusive Excellence is the importance of institutionalization and not to leave things to sort of this informal, you just actually just don't, it will happen for some people, but not for others. And that you need to, like those kinds of programs have to be institutionalized. It has to be clear how you would find a mentor, for example, and sort of what the expectations are. It has to be laid out in a way that doesn't leave it to chance or to the hope that you will be visible to someone.
Hi, everyone. Jackie, thanks for inviting me to be part of this event. My name is Robert Cody, and I'm a professor at the New York Institute of Technology, and I've been teaching there for quite a long time now, maybe almost 20 years. I'm also a graduate of the school. And I served as the chair of the department in the Old Westbury campus for 12 years. And during that time, it was very important for me on an administrative level, but also on mentoring young students to help them understand what their value was to the profession, what their value was to the world in which they were going to produce work and create places for people, how important that was, and also to express an idea about equity and inclusion and making sure that everyone was treated equally and everybody understood that was part of their imagination as an architect, that you couldn't put one person in front of another person, and your work was to maintain that relationship between people and the places that you create for. So there's equity and inspiration go together, I think. And I also served as associate dean for a little while when our new dean came in, Maria Pergolini, who's a woman, and previous dean was also a woman, so I've worked for women in academia, which I think is something that's happening much more often these days. Many of the local schools, I think all of them now, the deans are women here in New York, so that's fantastic. Right, so I think that in and of itself starts to bring forward a different type of understanding about how women are part of this profession. And we also look to, through the AIAS and their leadership, also bring opportunity for our young women students. This year, the president is a woman in both chapters, right? Last year, one of the campuses was a woman. Previous year, it was a woman in Old Westbury. So this has been part of our culture at the school, and that mentorship opportunity coming from the organization, the president of that organization, right, going down through the student body is inspirational for all. Right? So I think that's an important part of it. And one of our students, Julia Andor, became the national vice president of AIAS just recently, and a number of years ago we won a national award for what our students do in terms of equity and relationships between each other, right, in the school. So that's an important part of what I think and I do. I'm also a practicing architect. I have a practice in Brooklyn, and my partner is a woman. She's my wife, so she's an equal partner, maybe more than equal, because she keeps me in line and keeps things going. And she also teaches. And we've recently also completed a book, and as part of that, we're working on another where we're looking to investigate a bit more about women in history through a figure that we know had women involved in his life, but they didn't get the equal treatment and respect that they deserved in his work, and that's Alvar Aalto. So the book that we just completed is Alvar Aalto and the Future of Architecture, and we talk a bit in that book about his first wife Anyo and his second wife Alyssa, and new book that we're working on, we're going to talk about that a little bit more. And what we found in doing the research, looking at archival material at the Aalto Foundation and talking to people that had worked for him, most of those that are still alive who did work for him really worked for Alyssa. And so his first wife, what was interesting for us was that she was not only taking care of the household and the children and those things, but was also keeping him, right, and his practice working forward, because he was out and about quite often. And she would do a lot of the drawings. She was more well known for her talent as a draftsperson than he was. And in fact, the project for the finished pavilion here in New York City, they had submitted 3 proposals. Altos won, Años came in 2nd place, and Altos came in 3rd place. So it was an interesting, and looking at her drawings I think were more interesting than his was as drawings, but his idea was the one but they were both similar to each other. And we found through looking at the work that Alyssa had done, that she ran the office. She became his wife in the early 50s and became kind of his managing partner after that point, so was working and managing the office. And then after he died, she was the sole principal of the Alvar Aalto office, completing many, many projects, and she was in that role for 18 years. Right, so almost as long as she was married to him. Right, so in terms of levels of respect, levels of appreciation for that work, right, and just knowing that there were these women that were involved, right, throughout history, that were part of what we do as architects and the experiences we have and these wonderful buildings like with Aalto, but they don't get necessarily the recognition that they deserve. Right, so part of what we're trying to do is expose that bit. Right, so I think that's also one of the answering the problem of what I feel, right, in what I do and my experience is that not enough recognition and value, right, for what you do.
And I would, as an academic, add that one of the very important roles we need to play in the classroom is bringing that into the classroom, into our syllabi, into the readings, into the discussions that we have, so that that's starting very early on for students. Great, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Latoya Nelson Kamdang, and Jackie, thank you so much for inviting me to the panel. This is a great opportunity to fellowship with you this fall, and really an important topic. I work at the intersection of practice. I'm also a professor, as well as a researcher and an advocate. In my practice, I currently am the director of operations at ENIAC Architects, where I'm overseeing all firm operations from our New York office to our Shanghai office. I started in practice as a junior designer and kind of weaved my way through the profession. Is a design project my most, I think, when asked about my most notable project, I did have the opportunity to work on the African American Museum in Washington, D.C. for the Smithsonian, in particular the Slavery Gallery for that. So it's my love letter to my ancestors, so I often think about that process. I was also, when working on that project, pregnant with my daughter, so it was very meaningful for me. As a full circle story. I actually met Jackie through practice. In terms of advocacy around really partnering with women-owned firms, minority-owned firms in the RFP process, making sure that I knew who was available, who to collaborate with, so that we are lifting as we're climbing at all times. And so I apply that to practice, as well as being in charge of operations. I have a very wide lens to the staff. And so when we talk about mentorship, we've instituted a very programmed mentorship program where we assign people to mentors annually, because the organic way wasn't working. People just kind of connected with people that they had something in common with, and it was the informal pieces don't work. But I think that lens, being on this side and then coming through the industry, I certainly do have a lens to, I think some of the challenges that we face And I think one of them is that, as Graciela mentioned, in the principal partner class is an echo chamber sometimes because it is dominantly men in the room when they're having the conversations. So when it comes to elevating women to that level, across, the large firm, from even the boutique firms, when you look at the websites, it's still dominantly male, it's dominantly white male. So I think we're just still having a challenge breaking that barrier. Our firm is 50% women, but not at the highest levels of leadership, and also not at the design side of the practice. So that continues to be a challenge generally, and I think across other firms I've heard this as well. How do we foster women who can continue to not only be management, not only be technical, not that that's not important, but we know that the design authorship is really the pinnacle of the profession and is still a little bit guarded. In my teaching, I'm teaching at Pratt Institute now for 15 years. This semester I'm teaching professional practice, where I've revamped the whole class and really created basically 2 firms in the class to give them a sense of what it's like to think about things from the finance, mission, vision side. And I think in terms of my teaching, especially through the lens of gender, I think the curriculum being very much in terms of the women's work and precedents that we're introducing in the course, understanding and bringing in more women architects of note and people of color into the curriculum, so that we're not only seeing the same faces and projects over and over again. So really trying to open the lens to diversify the curriculum and the voices and even the people that I bring into the class, and sometimes the projects that we work on and the neighborhoods that we intersect with. It's definitely a part of that. In terms of my research, I was in Taiwan for a year as a Fulbright scholar, researching indigenous architecture there, and I submitted that research to the Global Architecture History Teaching Collaborative, and that is a repository where people can download research for things that may not have necessarily been taught to us in our architectural history curriculum. I'm currently working with the Architectural League, finishing up a grant where we're looking at AI through the lens of Black excellence, which will be published shortly. For advocacy, I am on the national board for the American Institute of Architects, and I'm on the board for ACE of Greater New York, as well as the NCARB Education Committee. I think the intersection of those 3, one, the education, really being able to define the curriculum of what it means and what's important to be an architect, but also like linking that back to, practice where monitoring all of the staff and making sure that they're having this optimized path to becoming, an architect, right? And so I then sort of full circle see what some of the challenges are for students coming into the workforce, and some generational shifts from students even 10 years ago in terms of the way they think about work, the way they approach, work-life balance. That has definitely come into full circle. But I think one, visibility of women in leadership is so important in architecture, and that when people think about the word architect, that they could think about that being a man or a woman, and I think we have work to do in that regard.
Thank you, Latoya, and also our panelists for these already very inspiring, thought-provoking responses. And we've already actually started to dip into the second question, Latoya. You were raising this, but I'll ask it nonetheless. And but I think it picks up already, or we can pick up and expand on some of your thoughts, which is, what strategies do you feel have been effective, but also ineffective in creating a more level playing field for all women in architecture?
I can start just by just sharing that I think some of the effective initiatives that I've seen in firms are actual implementations of policies for diversity and inclusion, but those policies really should handle or work for is to open opportunities for minorities, and I'm talking about not only women but minorities in general, because like I said before, firms tend to say, yes, we hire a very diverse pool of professionals, but like Latoya was saying, most of them sometimes not even in designer roles, even less in leadership positions. So how can you provide those opportunities for them to really advance? And like we said before, through mentoring within those advancement stages. But something that I also think is really important is to work for that pay equality. I'm sure that a lot of you are aware a woman earns 14 cents less than a man with the same education, same background, same experience. Is that research that has been done. If we talk about the BIPOC community or even Latinas, it's even more the disadvantage. So how can we work for being more transparent on salary and also level that gap? Because right now it does exist. You don't see that in the public sector, and that's one of the things that when I moved into the public sector, of course, is the same salary for everyone, the same open positions. But when we're talking about private firms, that is where I see that there is a disparity that firms need to work. And I think some of the ineffective strategies is when those firms don't have the metrics to measure what they're doing. Because just by saying they are doing, they don't know if they're going in the right direction. They don't know if they are actually providing that support to their employees. So it's just to show that there's something that is being done, but there is no way of measuring progress. And that's something that I think, for instance, AIA is working at the Strategic Council. We're actually working on doing research on that. How can we advance that firms actually take action in developing those metrics so they can advance?
I'm so glad you raised that, because that's one of my pet peeves, is to judge a word. I think for a long time people or firms, organizations thought we needed to have strategic plans to advance our goals toward greater diversity, whatever organization it might be. It's like without an implementation plan, without metrics, it's really just sort of saying, well, you know, I hope someday that X, Y, and Z happens. I mean, you really do have to have, you need to be keeping track. But in order to keep track and to have timelines, you do need to know what you're measuring. And that's tricky. Like, metrics can be tricky for this kind of change, but I'm really glad to hear that AIA is working on that.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
We spent the whole year with one study group at the Strategic Council researching on that, so yes, it's important.
And it really does have to be internal to an organization or a profession. And it's not something like someone can just give you the metrics. You really have to define them yourself, so that's, thank you. Taylor or Ron, did you want to add add to that?
Sure, yeah, in terms of, I think one thing that's definitely gotten better over time is the work flexibility, and I think it was mostly due to the pandemic. But I think one of the challenges of, you know, childbirth, you know, or family planning is that, you know, I say 10 years ago, the requirement was that people really expected you to come back quite quickly, and they didn't want you to work from home at all. So it was very stressful, I think, if you didn't have a support system around you to accommodate that. And I think we did lose a substantial number of women who were not able to, they couldn't justify an architect's salary and the cost of childcare to be in the office. It would have offset at that stage in their careers. So now I do see, with having a 3-2 or flexible work week, that staff are planning, you know, with their partners on how to manage those expenses in those days, and then they're able to still get their work done, but also, you know, not have to come back to work so quickly, or, you know, to not have to have such an enormous amount of childcare expenses. I do think that piece was very challenging for me. I had to take a break after I gave birth because it just didn't work. And I think getting back into the workforce, you know, it had its challenges, but it definitely, I needed to have a supportive work environment at that point. So I think now, I do think it's better. I think we still could, you know, advance that a bit, you know, in terms of equity across different firms and what's available. In terms of what we could get better, I do think that people were hired into positions, and this issue of belonging wasn't really addressed. So you have the diverse staff, they're at the office, now what? You know, like, what about firm culture? How does this adapt? You know, how do we make people feel welcome? How do we give people the skills that they need to succeed in this environment? And I do think when we talk about, you know, intentionality around mentorship, around training, around what aspects of practice, what qualities do you need to be successful at whatever firm or workplace you're going to, is very important, because not everyone is coming from the same background. Some people who start at our firm, their parents were architects, right? Like, so they grew up working in their parents' office, and someone else may not come with that exact same experience. So how do we create equity in that situation? So those are the questions that we're always asking, like, how do we really create that sense of belonging? It's not just like putting diverse people in a room and saying, okay, now we did it, check. You know, it's actually the work isn't making it work, you know. So.
And having facilitators that can help with that too, I think is so important. That's something that we thought about at my university, is that it's work, it's skills, right? And how do you provide help, right? Which I think if people express and want their culture, the institutional culture to change, what help is available for them, and that help, the assumption is not that it falls on the people who are being hired, who are, you know, if they're from diverse backgrounds, that it's somehow their job. So I don't know how much firms are thinking about that kind of, you know, facilitator role, someone who's actually trained in expertise and knows how to help that kind of change happen.
I think it's having empathy, and we're having trouble with that in this country these days. And I think if we are more empathetic and more understanding, then we'll make a better place and a better world for each other. That equity and equality is just a part of what we should be doing. Right? So it's hard for me to answer this question as the white male in the room. Right? But I know that I have, and learning from working with students and understanding, and from my own background about being empathetic and how important that is to have understanding about difficulties and challenges that people have and where they come from, and how to make them better through that understanding.
And I think that role of the ally is extremely important. But again, too, I think that there needs to be support for someone who wants to be an ally, some help. And so I think it's important, again, to recognize that there is expertise, right? There's don't necessarily have to all of us reinvent the wheel. And I think it is really important to see, to get the support that you need in your institution to make that change and to do it well, to support allies, to support diverse staff that you're hiring. There are people who've been doing this for decades, right, that have done research on it, they're working in the field, and to call on them, get expert advice. We would do that for anything else, right? So why won't we do that for this? So, okay, so in that regard, and I'm realizing that we're keeping in, we've got 20 minutes. Let's talk fast. Maybe a quick round on who needs to step up for change to happen.
Everyone.
Yeah, that's very true.
No, I think that definitely those that need the advice and support are the ones that need to step up. Like in my passion for being an advocate and support my minorities, which I'm part of those, it's trying to let everybody know that you have a voice, that you can speak up, that even though you are the person that is different in the room and that maybe you don't see anybody that look like you or talk like you or act like you, your voice is important because it's bringing all this different perspective that is missing in that room. And when I say room, is work and is our own environment, day-to-day living. So I always think that we are the ones that need to step up, but definitely there needs to be acknowledgement from the firms in leadership roles that this support needs to be provided. And because now I want to mention something that has been actually bothering me since I found out about the new movement that is actually counteracting on EDI initiatives, which is the merit movement, is the MEI, which is Merit, Excellence, and Intelligence. Mm-hmm. And what this movement is, it started with Alexander Wang back in 2021, I believe, just by a statement that I'm gonna start hiring people that has merit and I don't care about demographics or cultural background. And then because of the Supreme Court and everything that happened in 2023, that movement got a little bit of push, and just recently, Tesla put a lot of money into that initiative that is pushing firms now to follow the merit as opposed to JEDI initiatives. So that's something that we need to be aware of, because unfortunately, and I'm talking about sometimes big firms and corporations, they are putting aside the JEDA initiative. They are eliminating those leadership roles of EDI within the firm because now they're thinking that they're going to go another route. So we've been all these years, like you say, decades, in working on creating a more healthy environment within firms, a better firm culture. But now we're facing that is shifting the other way. So we need to be aware of that. And that's why I'm saying everybody needs to speak up and advocate for the change to continue, because we still have tons of years to come. We are actually studying at the Strategic Council, a group is studying how to eliminate bias from architecture by 2050. Because realistically, we don't think before 2050 we can eliminate bias. And that's pretty bad.
Yeah, I think so.
But that's why we don't do anything at our own little world of our firm. Is nothing is going to happen, and we're going to be stagnant on keep advocating but not advancing.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's definitely, sorry to interrupt. I think it's definitely from the top, you know, that we need people who are in leadership positions to advance this, and of course with pressure from all directions. I do think also, I know in the ESG reporting that when they look at companies who have, you know, a diverse makeup, when they look at companies who have gender equity, the financial performance is better, right? So if you want to make money, you have to do this. It makes sense. Like when you're designing communities, the people who reflect those communities should be on your design team. That's it.
And it's by that research, is 25% better financially than a non-diverse firm. So it's but then think about those numbers and then implement EDI strategies within your firm, not only because it's the good business to do, but it's because the good thing to do. So you have to tie both things together. And then that's how you really create impact. When you tie in the business with the good thing to do, which is improve the diversity.
It's interesting because when I was in the role of VP for Inclusive Excellence, I actually stopped making the moral argument and went entirely to this is good for everybody, this is good for you. You know, of course, academia is not quite the bottom line, but showing the increase in productivity, the increase in problem solving for companies, the increase in the bottom line, and you know, I don't know, it's a strategy. I agree with you, but I think all of us have to sort of think about the cultures that we're working in and what will resonate or not. And right now, you're right, there's so much pushback that I feel like it's hard to find that point of what will resonate. But for me, I did find that institutionally that sort of making the point of self-interest, like, and showing people, and again, this is where there's decades of research, it did get people to listen. So, okay, maybe we'll move on to the next question. What role can academia play in creating a culture of gender equity within schools and in preparing graduates to become advocates for gender equity in their future workplaces? So we have some teachers here.
I can say that in most schools, and NYIT certainly being one that is following the trends, that it's at parity with men and women in the studio. same with at Pratt, and probably the same in Buffalo, or almost the same in Buffalo.
We just reached parity.
Yeah, so that's a very,
This
very
semester with our
important as part of, you know, relationship to that the world is basically 50-50, right? So why shouldn't all of our schools, why shouldn't our firms and everything be that same way? So I think it's important to recognize and understand that there are changes that are happening in relationship to just simple entry into the profession at the academic level, but unfortunately that doesn't propel itself into the profession, which is, I think, related to the previous conversation of having this problem of understanding what does merit mean, and what would that mean on an academic side. We kind of know what that means, but is that really true when the entry-level student already has something that's holding them from achieving that merit? And it might not be their talent, but it could be something else. So we need to understand what that is. And that's on all levels. That's not just a woman thing, that's a man thing, it could be a white man thing. And I think we need to be better at understanding that problem and how we can reinforce helping people to achieve what they need to achieve, so that merit becomes much more clear, and this doesn't become a problem, that it becomes a policy that is enacted to reinforce something that is no longer valid in our society.
I think one thing, especially since I'm teaching professional practice, is preparing people for the realities of practice that doesn't actually link to studio and architecture and design, which is basically 80% of it. It's the management of personalities. It's how you advocate for yourself without sounding arrogant. Like it's the conversations that people are having with the key decision makers that people don't know that they're having, to make sure that they're advancing in the firm. Those are the conversations that I want to introduce to students, especially for those who may not know how to navigate the politics of the workforce. And that the skills, the soft skills, are really what advance you, because at some point, everyone kind of gets to this technical competency level, and then you hit the pyramid and only so many people are going to advance, and that's likely based on some personality thing, you know? And that doesn't always seem fair, but it is the reality. So I think when people are aware that they have to navigate that, then it just becomes, it kind of dissipates. It's like, oh, I don't know what's happening here. All of my peers are advancing, but I'm the one who's the Revit superstar. What's going on? People who are making the decisions don't know who the Revit superstar is on the team. You know, so I think it's important to be honest about those conversations, and certainly on the side of advancement and promotions, to set up equitable processes, but we're really not there yet. But I think, you know, it's important as students are coming into the workforce that they're aware of what they need to do in terms of professional practice.
And aware that it's not going to be the same as the, academia. And I'm thrilled that one of my former students is here tonight and took a gender and architecture class with me. And my experience with teaching that class was partly to let people know that there may be some challenges ahead. And I've sort of felt sometimes guilty about that, because you don't want to discourage anyone from thinking the sky's the limit, but at the same time, you don't want to be hitting those obstacles and thinking it's me, when it's not necessarily, maybe you, but it may also be something much deeper and structural and systemic. Okay, let's switch to professional organizations, and I want to ask you what they have an important role to play in advancing gender equity, and do you have examples of initiatives within professional organizations that have made a difference to you? And we've already actually heard a little bit about that tonight. But also, what do you want to see professional organizations doing in the future to better support women? And some of this has already come up, but I think it's important to really focus in on what professional organizations can be doing, are doing and can be doing better.
I can start, and I can answer this pretty quickly. When I first moved to New York, I went to the Center for Architecture and joined the Women in Architecture group. Those are still my friends and colleagues as we've gone through our careers, even though we're at different firms. There's some people on the client side. To me, what that represents is, having your cohort of people. And especially I think being new to the city, finding your tribe. Because when you talk to someone else who's going through the exact same thing as you, you're not crazy. Because you can then commiserate and say, hey, I felt a very similar thing, or I had a very similar interaction. And sometimes just having that ability to talk to someone that has a very shared experience, and then you can strategize on how to navigate it together. I also did the speed mentoring, and the mentor that I connected with is a principal at FX, and we still have coffee today. And I can just call her if I have a question or I'm navigating an issue, and she's been really wonderful. So I do think, in terms of professional organizations, I work on the advocacy side, on boards and governance and things like that. But the meaningful things to me are the relationships with the people that you meet.
I do agree with Latoya's thoughts, and for me specifically, there was an event that I would recommend everyone here to attend next year if you can. It's called the Women's Leadership Summit. In the past, it was every 2 years that AIA put this summit together. Now it's every year. But back in 2017, I got a scholarship to attend this event, and it was, at that time, 450 women architects or designers in a room. Now this year we were more than 800, almost 850. And it was impactful for me because at that time I was the only woman as a board member in Long Island chapter. So when I came back to Long Island that year, 2017, I was like, I need to help creating this support group that I see at this summit that we don't have in Long Island, because I was like Jackie, I was the only woman attending meetings, and we had still like 120 women members, but I never saw them. So I had my tribe together. We started like 5, and we opened the Women in Architecture Committee. To this day, we host events all year round. We're 16 now, committee members, but it has opened a lot of opportunities for all of us. A lot of them went on their own, opened their own firm, got new jobs. Like the support group really, really helps, because not only you can relate to someone going through the same issues and, like Latoya said, not thinking you're crazy, but every time there is an obstacle in between all of us, we help each other. And it's like really, that's really empowerment. And like Latoya, the people that I met at that summit, that they became my mentors, I'm still in contact with all of them. So I truly love that Jackie helped initiating this committee in Queens, because you will see how the impact is gonna grow over the years. Long Island chapter right now, 50% of the members are women. And when I started the committee, I was the only woman. So it definitely is gonna change the demographics, I know. And I think that it is important to have that support group within the members, because it will create other opportunities for other initiatives to develop within the chapter and the community, of course.
Rob? You were talking about student organizations before.
Well, yeah, we at NYIT, the NOMA chapter, the student chapter, is quite organized these days, and they're going to the conference next week, right? Oh, it's today.
Latoya and I are going to be there tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow. Yeah. So they're going there. It was reminding me. Reminding me about they had to miss a review and had to switch things around in order for those students to make sure that they were able to attend. So yeah, that's been something that has been an interesting experience for me, to have those students finally having a more of a voice. Right? And NYIT is the most diverse university in the United States. And the architecture school, not only does it have parity with men and women, it now has parity with Latino, and others. So there are more, you
like
there, right, than like me. Right, and it's changing also a bit on the teaching side as well. So of the faculty that have been hired over the past 5 years, there have been more of them have been women. So that's also a positive. We're just trying to get that up to parity, but that'll take till 2050, I think, to get that to happen in most schools.
And in terms of student groups, I don't know how it is at your school, but always a challenge is funding for the students to be able to go to these conferences, which are amazing for creating networks and for connecting. And so, is there any potential donors out there?
Well, MIT is very good at the university level, supporting the students. But then we also have an incredible alumni organization that specifically helps fund these kinds of things. And we have scholarships that are particularly home to women. Right? To a number of them in our interior design department. So that's something we've been working on for many years.
Alumni, incredibly important resource. Okay, so we've got 2 questions left, and the next one, maybe I'll direct Rob or anybody who wants to jump in, but it's about the public image. This came up earlier, the public image of the architect, which can really influence how people, including clients, respond to a woman in the profession. And how does that public image need to change, and how can we intervene to bring about a shift?
Well, we were talking about this the other night in preparation for this, and I was reminded on a different front, which is on the construction side, and how I'm working on a project right now that the general contractor is a woman, and the engineer is a woman. And after this, I went back and looked to jog my memory. The plan examiner was also a woman. All right, so the dynamic shifts and changes, and I think we can do what we can right on our side and on our side of what we do for the built environment, but there's certainly not enough presence of women in the construction side, and we can, because there's opportunities for students coming out of school that are interested in building things, not necessarily designing things. that should be also an encouragement. And it should certainly be an encouragement for a woman that's interested in that action. There's more opportunity on that side for that person if they're willing to deal with the harassment of the men, which obviously hasn't gone away. All right, but that job has given me a lot of hope. All right, and that there is opportunity, and if the woman is in charge and is writing the check, you see a very different attitude towards that woman in that environment.
And that gets to the issue too of visibility. Just make me think about who stays in the office and who goes out on to sites. But also in going back to this issue of architecture schools, who gets invited for those prestigious talks, who's presented as someone who is worth listening to, for example, including what you were saying to Latoya about syllabi and things like that. Okay, so I don't want to rush us, but I do want to have time to talk with all of you. So we're coming now to our last question, and it's one that I think we all need, and that is, what gives you hope that we will overcome deeply entrenched biases against women in architecture to achieve a truly equitable profession?
I think for me, what gives me hope is the young women coming out of school. They're very talented, ambitious, and vocal. You know, and I do think, you know, coming into the workforce with that confidence and empowerment definitely gives me hope that, you know, when it's time, you know, for them to advance, and as they're very intentional about advancing, that we'll start to see a pretty transformative industry. So this generation gives a great.
Yeah, I think there are many women that are in the background performing substantial projects and work and taking care of the office and all that kind of stuff. I think, but once they start to get exposed into the foreground, things will change. So I think that's part of what needs to happen, right? Is advancing what women are doing in the office and how they can perform equally, if not better, than the guys.
I think that what gives me hopes is that I've seen over the last few years that more women are stepping up on those roles that we are now discussing here. So I think it is important because of what the students, when they are coming out of school and they see a woman in leadership or visible or influencer that they can relate to, it will definitely inspire them to achieve those goals. And the reason that I'm saying is because I was that person that I got inspired at that time, and that's why I wanted to be there. I think it's important to have visibility at all levels, so we can teach the new generation on what different paths they can approach in order to succeed on what they like to do. And just be vocal, like Latoya was saying, that I have the pleasure to meet a lot of the students at NYIT from the NOMAD chapter and also the AIS chapter. And they are the ones that are organizing all the things, that they are putting everybody in order, on check, super involved with the chapter, reaching out all the time, how can we collaborate? So I think that the initiative is there, and the empowerment. They just need guidance once they graduate, because they have that guidance within their school, but once they graduate, that's where we have to give them the hand and continue that role of leadership that they want to pursue.
Yeah, those are great responses. And I would add that what gives me hope is seeing the circles that are pushing for change expanding and themselves becoming more diverse. And I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight, and this is a very diverse crowd. We have men and women and people from all different backgrounds, and that wasn't necessarily the case not even that long ago. So I think the audiences for these discussions have definitely changed in the last few years, and that makes me hugely hopeful. So with that, I would love to open up the floor for questions and comments, and Sarah, I think I might need some help on the floor.
Sarah has a question.
Sarah, do we have maybe a mic?
Thank you so much. I just also first want to say thank you, Jackie and AA Queens, for holding this event. When I saw it advertised, I was thrilled. At AA Brooklyn, we just started, tried to reactivate our Women in Architecture Committee, and a group of us went to the Women's Leadership Summit, and this seemed like, whoa, we're on a tail end, and I'm very glad to see that we're already having a reunion with some of the people who were there too, including Graciela. And Chelsea Davis is also from AA Brooklyn. She's one of our directors. Robert, Cody, you and Angela Amoya did a talk at AA Brooklyn in February with Kelly Hayes-Bacalani talking about books written about women in architecture. First, I just want to say that when we were at the Women's Leadership Summit, and Kim Dowdell told us that around 25% of architects were women, I was shocked. I had never put it in that perspective before, and I've been immune to it. In school, this was a long time ago. Mostly the classes were almost 50% women, and I'd heard they'd caught up. And in my own practice in New York City, working for small firms, and then now for the past 20 plus years working in my own firm, I see women around me all the time. Our chapter has 50% of the board is women, and 30% of the chapter are women. It just didn't occur to me that there was such a disparity. And I wonder what makes that happen, because at some point, I think it's a choice. I think that people want to hire people who are qualified, or at least I see that in my own experience. And what makes people turn away from this? Is there any, and I mean anybody, because in school, I remember in one class, we have, you start out with 100 people in your freshman class, you get whittled down to 50 of those same graduates, and then you're told to look around the room. Maybe a handful of you will be actually practicing architects. What makes people make that choice? Is there a survey out there saying that? That's my question. Why aren't people choosing architecture? And why are women therefore? Obviously more women are choosing not to than men. Why?
I think, Sarah, from my own perspective and what I have learned from talking just to people, we lose them, that 50% from school. We lose them at a point when women start creating families. And like Latoya was saying, it's very difficult because of our firm culture. It's very difficult to balance both long working hours plus having a baby, and then 2-3 months later, I don't have a baby, so I don't know what it is, but then you have to go back and leave your baby in a daycare that is going to cost you pretty much what you're making at your job. So you'd rather stay with your baby, and then you don't stay with the baby for a few months. You stay for a while because the daycare is still very expensive. And then guess what? Another baby comes. So what happens is that it becomes into years of being off the profession. So I've seen it, and I've talked to a lot of them 6-7 years after they left the profession because they were raising a family. They want to come back, but they are in a huge disadvantage because they lost all those years of professional practice, and they don't feel like starting from scratch again. So how can we support those women to get that balance that Latoya finally got? Because after COVID, there is no excuse. We can provide that support, so we don't lose them. we need to create that practice model where we can achieve both and we don't lose the women. I think that's where the disparity is, to be honest with you. And then of course, the business. So architecture and then technology. And then so should I go to construction maybe, or another path because I'm gonna make more money. So it's all those things that we need to take into account that we as professionals need to work on so we don't lose them in the middle.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, it's not in academia. In most programs, we're close. We're not at 25% for sure. We're losing them, I would say, in the first 5 to 10 years of their career. So something's happening in practice. That could be the lack of mentorship. It could be the lack of advancement or seeing yourself in the future of the firm. And of course, the family planning piece is difficult because there's physical downtime that's required there.
Well, there's no vacation, there's very little, there are few benefits, the pay isn't great, so I can see why people would say that it's definitely, you have to give up quite a lot to be in the profession. You did in school, you had all-nighters, and you had late nights. It's just assumed you're going to be putting in overtime, and benefits are, if they're there, they're not nearly as comprehensive as a similar profession would provide. So I can see that. How do we alter them? There have been several events I've been at this year from whatever perspective we're at, small business firm, etc. How can we modify this with this business model? Because it's not helping us, it's hurting us, so many of us, and I mean everybody. It keeps us constrained to a system that is it's a lot of labor for not nearly as much reward for that labor because we're reinventing the wheel each and every time. And I wonder how do we start breaking into that business model and providing support in various ways, including care for families and mothers in particular.
There's a really good, the AIA San Francisco chapter has a group called Equity by Design, and they have done, I believe it's 3 large-scale surveys of this issue of why we lose women in practice. And the last one, I think they had like 11,000 respondents, so it's quite thorough, and it points to, we're losing even women who choose not to have children. So there's multiple factors here, but you've heard some of them tonight. The pay disparity, lack of promotion, the culture in the office, definitely the struggle with being a young parent, the long hours, and Deborah Burke called it the death of 1,000 cuts. So I think this really gets to the fact that it's not going to be one solution, it's going to be many, but again, the research is out there indicating what the issues are and also where the plunges happen, where you lose people. And this issue of leadership and not getting promotions, not getting the plum projects is definitely a part of that too. So again, we don't need to reinvent the wheel, but we do need to publicize the fact that we do have information out there. I wish there was more, but it's actually pretty solid information.
One of the other issues is the exams. When you would take the exam, sometimes it aligns also with family planning too. And so just in terms of getting the license, I think the rolling clock caught a lot of people, especially if they were having kids in the middle of those exams, and it just, and this is all anecdotal from the folks I know who didn't make it, it just became too challenging with everything else they were balancing.
They got rid of the rolling clock.
Yeah.
They
It's gone.
did, I know.
And
It was
they
yes.
recognize this as a.
Yes, no, and I think, you know, it didn't help the folks that were already,
Sure.
you know, who they basically after what, 5 years, their families, they had to start over. I think I have a couple of friends who were definitely impacted by that, and we're at the 6th exam, and they were like, I just can't start over, you know. So they're practicing, they're working in construction, they're working for the client, they're not licensed. So they wouldn't fall in that figure, they would be outside of that, but they're tangential to the industry, they're not registered architects.
Fun fact, I passed my last exam on my 5th year anniversary of the rolling clock. You have a question?
Hi, yeah, I just want to say, first off, I have a storefront in Sunnyside, Queens, and it has a low level, and little children go by all the time, and all those children think women are architects. They don't know anything different, because I'm sitting there and I'm the lady architect. I think it's really charming, actually. I want to say, though, that this has been going on for years. The idea that the next crop is going to be able to do it because they're bright and more outspoken, we've been bright and outspoken for 40 years. I actually don't want to hear that it's a new group that's going to be able to do it. There's something stopping it. There's something definitely stopping it. And it's not that you need help. I'm sorry, it also makes women sound like disabled. You know, we need help, we need support, we need to be able to achieve. We need our excellence to be acknowledged. We need to get credit for our work. It's really, really basic. And somehow, in all those situations, it gets blocked. Because there are very talented women out there. They don't need to be, you know, it's not that they don't have mentors or need to be nurtured. They're very, very, very talented. They're talented in something, man. What happens to them?
To that point, I actually want to point out this. I'm sure you're familiar as with Madame Architect and Julia Camomila initiative.
Yes.
She highlights women in the profession, and that's about what you are saying. Like, how do we get credit for our work? How do we get visibility? And I think Julia has broken a lot of barriers by just making women visible within the profession. But I think that's just one initiative. So how do we, you know, enlarge that? And how do we just make ourselves play on a level field?
Well, it takes every single person in the profession. It doesn't necessarily take policy. I mean, every single person is a part of what happens when women don't achieve in the profession. Everybody's involved.
We had Jeannie Gang do a talk, not on the big lecture circuit with the poster and all that business, not to talk about design. It was for a construction class. And what was interesting was some of the students knew who she was, but most didn't. Right? But after the talk, they knew who she was, and they knew it wasn't just about design, but it was about her knowledge of what those buildings were and the constructability of those buildings, and how she knew the intricate details of what those buildings were about. And that changed some of their perception. Right? I sensed it, right? That this was a woman coming in to talk about design, but no, she was coming in to talk about the buildings that her office was making, and the construction, right? And the detail and the effort that was involved, and how she was involved in all of that process. Right?
Yeah.
So that was very interesting. And I think we need more of that as well, right? To know that there's no difference.
I mean, I would say I have no cure for systemic racism and sexism. I wish I did, and I think if we're talking 2050, I'll be significantly older by then. I definitely won't be working anymore. So, I mean, as an alternative is not having hope. You know, I do know that it's incredibly challenging when we look at, the divisiveness of our politics and the blowback of EDI. And there haven't even been that any substantial gains that have been made to blow back from. I mean, I could talk about that frustration, you know, but I think let's say, I'm in a position where I'm staffing, and I'm just one person, but I have the authority to staff people on projects in an equitable way, right? I make those decisions at my firm. Who gets to be on the premier projects? And I can staff that equitably and fairly, and I can make sure that we are promoting women designers and that they're being put in the position to work on some of the most amazing projects in the world, and that they're given the tools to do that. Is that gonna fix the entire profession? No, but it's what I can control, you know. I think, my parents went to segregated schools in Mississippi. You know, they weren't even allowed to go to school with white students. I'm just a generation removed from segregation, and I'm here in New York making those decisions for women and, people who are designing and building, our future. So I don't know, like, I could choose to be overwhelmed, but I look at like where, I came from and where I am now, and I choose hope. So I'm gonna choose to say that perhaps before I retire, we can get to some equity.
I also, just to add to Laura's point, I think this is also a question about accountability, right? What accountability is there? And this is something that professional organizations can think about. The reason that, and we still have a long way to go, segregation changed because of legal changes, right? It became the law, it became illegal. And, that's about also institutionalizing change. And the other flip part of that is the accountability piece that goes with. And so, to give you just an example, I think we can all think about the roles, the ability that we have. Latoya is talking about staffing, but at the University of Buffalo, we have name it, a firm comes in every year because we have the talent, right? We have the most that they want to hire. It's an architectural firm, a big architectural firm. They come in every year and hold a pizza lunch and make like a pitch to our students to come work for them. And I happened to be there when I was department chair one year when they were making their pitch. And they were so clearly losing the students because they were talking about working overtime, and we all chipping together, and it's and the students, they were talking about sort of a corporate culture that was not resonating. So I asked questions. I asked them to talk about things like work-life balance and what does your firm do for that? And they said their answer was softball games, right? So then they lost the rest of the students. But we can to some extent also be part of that accountability.
I have a question. So if 75% of licensed architects are men, what is the role that men should be playing in all this to advance women professionally, mentor them, support them? What should be their role in all this? That's a lot of men. Architects, so.
It's really a social question. It's very difficult to answer that in a way that we can do in the next 5 minutes. We take a full forum on this conversation, and I think that problem is evident in not just here in the United States, but around the world. And there's a fear of losing control is all a part of it, and that's a social thing. And until that dissipates, it's very difficult to make full change in what it is that we do. So it's outside, a lot of this is just outside the architectural profession, unfortunately. But within the profession, since we're more progressive than other thinkers, because we just think about the evidence in front of us, not as much about our opinions, I hope. Because our opinions mean less to how we act and relate to the culture and the buildings and the cities that all surround us, that we need to be objective and a little less subjective in what it is that we do. So my hope is that comes alive, right? That we recognize and realize what our obligation is to society. And with that, then we recognize again that we need to be equitable and we need to distribute that quality and equitable understanding, right, and empathy to everybody, right?
Jackie's point's a good point though, because it goes back to accountability. Because
Yep.
I hear a lot of women should band together, women should speak up more, women, all these things women should do, and as she said, 75% of people are men. Like, we can only do so much when we're a small percent. Means men usually do it all.
Well, let me just give a little bit of perspective. First of all, thank you very much. I know we came to speak about women in architecture, but a lot of the things that are unique to women are also unique to other groups. Architecture, let's remember, we go into it for love more than money, right? And I actually went to school. I was born in Jamaica. I came here at 20, went to school in Philadelphia, and came to New York in 1980. And worked for one architect for 10 years and then started my own firm. And we're still in touch. He's still an architect today and still going strong. He's a member of our chapter. But all of the workers that I had an office in Great Neck for 25 years. And every single worker came out of NYIT. So I was on the receiving end. A couple came in and they brought, I guess, associates that they knew in as we were hiring and expanding. And I have very high regard for the education at NYIT. This was from the Westbury campus. But remember, I'm hopeful, right? Because in 2024, where we are now, I'm seeing that rolling clock, that NCRB finally, I guess they did away with it maybe I'm not sure if it was pressure that they had or they just responded to, evolving realities. But that's what makes a difference, because I decided long ago not to get into the big corporate world of architecture, and I didn't want to work for a government agency, so I started my own firm. And the key is getting those young women registered, right? Because I lost most of them as they got to a certain point, as you say, because of marriage and family. It was very difficult. And some of them are still with me today, but it's not easy. And that rolling clock, as you experience yourself, was one of those, you talk about what's holding everybody down, it's those national requirements that weren't practical. And the pandemic of the last few years has opened everyone's eyes to flexibility. In '79, when I started out, we went to a 4-day work week. Not because of the pandemic, but because of energy efficiency, right? We wanted to travel less, so we went to a 10-hour, 40-hour week, Monday through Thursday. And now we're seeing that emerge again after the pandemic. So we should be hopeful, right? But this was a very good discussion, and it opened, I came here to listen to where are the women architects. I think they're around. We just have to, help to elevate them and get them registered. That's the key, so they can decide to set their own hours and start their own firms. Okay? Thank you.
Any more questions?
One comment about
Mr. Willie.
your comment about the getting the license, and I think that if a young woman can have that license, whether they exit the profession for a few years and come back, they still hold that license. Right? That's a very, very important part of this.
I would think that all my
Yeah, and I push for my students all the time, right? Get the license, whether you think you're going to use it or not, get the license, because it's something you can not know what's going to be forward 20 years, right? Or even if you want to do something for yourself, you still hold that, and that's a key to, right, better equity.
Well, I just want to echo what Patrick has said. There has to be more awareness. I think that Laura's right, but at the same time, I just feel that the more you advocate for something, the more you get. And it has been a low process, but I do think that it's elevating that voice out there among women. And I can see it, from the women's leadership. I haven't attended one, I must say, but I should.
You have to go.
But one of the things that I want to bring out is that I have a small practice. And most of the time, I have about 60 to 70% women in my office than men. So I must say, there is some aspect of it that actually changes the culture. And I do appreciate for the work that they do. And at the same time, I kind of, in many ways, mentor them, right? So I try my best to make sure that they seek that path to licensure, because that is what's going to make them a little bit elevate themselves, so to speak. So I do appreciate the panel, and Jackie, this is wonderful. It's a nice event. Thank you.
Thanks, Rudy. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I want to thank this amazing panel about just giving us your stories, inspiration, your insightful ideas and thoughts. Really, really appreciate you coming out, and thank you. Let's give them a great round of applause. There's still tons of food. I don't want to pack that. I'm not taking that, please. Drink, books that are still here for sale. We want Despina. I'm going to ask you to please sign my book. Mine too. So this is your opportunity. Oh, the raffle. Yes. Oh, the raffle. Who's got the raffle? Thanks for reminding me. I forgot. So yes, just 2 raffles before everybody. Oh, Jorge, I think is getting them. But yes, there's still books for sale. This is your opportunity to have Despina. And I guess I'll leave you down because it's a maze back there. So thank you again.
Thank you, everyone.